Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and updates on new gen hardware and their games. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and this week I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
COVID-free, good to be back, Damon.
Glad you are on the mend now. And we're also joined by IGN's community lead, Jada Griffin. Jada, welcome back to the show.
Hey, glad to be back, and I'm counting the minutes so I can go back to Baldur's Gate.
Oh, well, funny you mentioned that, because that is our jumping off point for this week's episode. We're talking about RPGs, and Baldur's Gate 3 is definitely the talk of the town in the gaming community right now. I don't think anyone was too surprised that the game is very good. Larian Studios has been doing great work with the Divinity series, but I think some of us are surprised at just how popular and what a phenomenon this game has been, given that it's a very hardcore Dungeons and Dragons RPG, and you don't see a lot of those games sort of reach this apex, this zenith of popularity there. Myself, I'm waiting to the PS5 version to play it, but Jada, do you like it as much as everyone else seems to?
I am completely enthralled with Baldur's Gate. It's kind of become my personality. Anytime I can throw in a reference from Baldur's Gate, I am now doing it. My friends are probably upset with me, but they're also playing Baldur's Gate because they're just mad that I beat them to the references. Baldur's Gate 3, I play a lot of D&D in my spare time. I GM my own game, and so like being able to experience what another team has put together, this masterful story, the narrative, the gameplay, how different the experience is from each and every person I talk to playing this game. It's crazy. It's one of those massive games. It's like Tears of the Kingdom earlier this year, where it really became that water cooler conversation. Baldur's Gate is doing the same thing, and I'm enjoying it more because I love D&D. So yes, I am loving it more, or just as much as everyone else.
I'm really looking forward to jumping in myself. Ryan, how about you? Any Baldur's Gate 3 in your gaming sphere right now?
I have not had the time yet, and with Starfield imminent, I'm not sure. Like, I know I want to play it because everything I'm reading and hearing from everybody in the office and around the gaming community, I think I would totally love Baldur's Gate 3. Like, I have no doubt. So now the 150 plus hours is, I'm definitely intimidated by that as somebody that doesn't have unlimited free gaming time, and contrary to what some people sometimes think online, we don't play games all day at work here at IGN.
Yeah.
We're making stuff about games, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I gotta find time for Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't know how I'm gonna stack that with Starfield this year, because they're both. I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 clearly will be in the Game of the Year conversation, and Starfield, we are hoping and I think to a degree expecting that based on Todd Howard and Bethesda Game Studios' track record and the little sliver of it, the hour that I've played of it so far, it gave no indication that it was going to be disappointing in any way. So yeah, if you love RPGs, as we're talking about on this episode, this console generation is for you.
It's been a great we're RPGs in general, and I'm sure Damon's we're gonna talk about a bunch more of those today.
Yeah. I mean, we already had Final Fantasy 16 and Diablo 4, which I believe right before this taping. Ryan, you currently consider that to be your game of the year?
That is my vote today. Jade and I were talking about it off mic, and I tweeted about this as well. It is. Relative to the other Diablos, I think it's my favorite campaign. They did an incredible job on the storytelling of this. Really made me care about the story as opposed to just caring about my character and my stats and my gear. But it's right there with Diablo 2 for me as the best in the series. And it might be the best in the series. I know nostalgia certainly colors my experience of Diablo 2, even though the remasters there, you could play Diablo 2 easily today, but it crushes Diablo 3 in every way, shape, and form. And it's just, as somebody that's always loved Diablo since Diablo 1, 4 is exactly what I wanted from Diablo, and Blizzard has delivered that. And it's just, I wish Diablo 4 had an in-game hour tracker, because I a while ago lost track of how much time I've put into it. So yeah, I knew with Starfield imminent, and now like I gotta play Baldur's Gate 3 as well. It's like, man, I gotta just mainline this campaign in Diablo 4 instead of just, I've been taking every side quest I see and really just soaking it all in, and I had to just put my foot down and mainline to the end. And the story, like I said, the story proved out to be awesome, so I'm glad I did that. But now there's these two other just monster RPGs that are right in front of me now.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, I'm glad you mentioned Starfield, because now with Baldur's Gate 3 out, everyone's really excited about RPGs. I thought we'd take a look at some upcoming next-gen RPGs in the near future, and then even looking further into next year and beyond. And Starfield is really the next really big one. And I want to get your thoughts, because we've talked a lot on this show about how important a release Starfield is for Xbox. Coming after this long drought of just no big AAA games from Xbox, and then of course the Redfall debacle earlier this year. Very, very important release for Xbox. But now I think after Baldur's Gate 3, I think inevitably people are going to be making some comparisons between Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, only because Baldur's Gate 3 is, at least for the time being, turned into this kind of accidental console exclusive for Sony. Because as we publicly know from Larian talking about it, that the Series S appears to be holding up, the split screen specifically functionality on the Series S seems to be holding up the Xbox version of Baldur's Gate 3. So, I would hope that Microsoft sent an army of engineers their way, and I'm not even joking. Like, I would imagine that they really did send some internal tech folks out to try and help them optimize, help them get it going. Because it's really, set any just console fanboy argument stuff aside, it's great that Xbox players have Starfield to console them, but by all accounts, Baldur's Gate 3 is an absolute front runner for Game of the Year, and it would be great for Xbox players to have access to it, just as PC players and very soon PlayStation 5 players will as well.
Starfield is only a couple weeks away from its official launch, and I think even next week the early access period begins for those who got the premium edition. It's going to be shown off in a presentation of some form in Gamescom in Germany next week, where I'll be not playable, but there's some sort of a presentation. So do you feel like the Xbox community is excited about this release?
They really are. It absolutely is. I know there's been a little chatter of like, well, is Microsoft marketing it enough? Like, no, they've been putting out plenty of stuff, the little animated shorts and some sort of lore bits. There was a really good, today as we record on Wednesday, there was a great sort of Q&A online with their design director that revealed a lot of interesting little nuggets, like that you'll be able to buy property in the big cities, like New Atlantis. So I'm absolutely going to buy some, whatever I can, like a whole building or a house or an apartment or whatever I can get. But the marketing hasn't been traditional on Starfield so far, but a 45-minute Starfield Direct can't really be considered traditional, but I think pretty soon that is going to be considered traditional marketing for a game with the kind of scale and scope that Starfield has. So yeah, the buzz is there. Everybody's ready. We've been waiting for this for a long time. This game was originally going to be out on 11/11/22. So, we've now been waiting about another 10 months, almost 10 months for it. So it is finally almost here, Damon. Yeah, September 1st is that early access date. So it's right around the corner as we record here in mid-August. And the Xbox world is ready.
Yeah, I think it's it's fair that they're going about it a different way, because Starfield is not your traditional game. It's one of these Bethesda mega games they release every decade?
Well, every 8 years at this point.
Yeah, almost at this point. And so it's understandable that they go about it a little bit differently.
Also in September is Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, big expansion for Cyberpunk. And this one, I feel like the buzz is a little muted on this one, a little bit quiet. I wonder if, coming right after Baldur's Gate 3 and then Starfield in the same month, I wonder if Cyberpunk's big expansion is going to sort of get swallowed up and get ignored a little bit. I don't know, either of you disagree?
I honestly, I forgot that it was dropping in the next month or so. I really liked Cyberpunk at launch. I played a good chunk of it. It was buggy, so I put it down and came back to it months later after the PS5 version launched and liked it a lot more. But with everything else that's been dropping this year, it's kind of hard for me to want to go back to Night City and the new town. I forget what the new town is, a Dogtown, I think, or something like that. It's really hard for me to want to go back and reinvest more time in this world.
Yeah, I think we'll see a long tail on the Cyberpunk expansion, as we've seen on Cyberpunk itself, right?
That's true.
the story of its launch on the old gen consoles is well told. But I think CD Projekt Red has earned the respect and trust of the community back.
I agree.
Through the year, 2 years, I guess it's coming up on 3 years now of hard work that they've put in since that difficult launch, and the game has continued to be popular and be played a lot. So yeah, I mean, in the face of these brand new things like Baldur's Gate 3 and Starfield, yeah, maybe it's going to be tougher for Phantom Liberty as an expansion pack to get that attention. But I think over time, there's going to be a long tail on that expansion where people might just buy it in 6 months from now, 8 months from now, after they've gotten through Baldur's Gate and Starfield, and go, oh yeah, there's that. Let me jump back into that new content for Cyberpunk.
I'm really glad you mentioned long tail because, like, look at The Witcher 3. Like, that is still getting all types of updates and stuff like that, and it's been a minute since Witcher 3 first launched.
Yeah.
So, like, CD Projekt Red is definitely one of those companies that I bet on the long run for their games.
Well, there are all sorts of RPGs on the horizon. In addition to the big AAA 3D first person of Starfield, there's also room for retro throwbacks like Sea of Stars, which has a 16-bit retro look. It's inspired by Mario RPG, Illusion of Gaia, Chrono Trigger. Looks very cool. It's from the developers of The Messenger, if you remember that game from a few years back. And it's out August 29th. It hits both Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus on the same day, which might be a first, actually. That game looks very cool. And then speaking of Mario RPG Remake comes out later this year. And yes, that's not on a new-gen hardware, but it is a new-gen version of Mario RPG, which is a classic, I think. Jada, are you a fan of Mario RPG?
I'm a huge fan. All hail Gino. Gino deserves all the love and respect. I hope Nintendo sells us all the Gino merch that we can get for Super Mario RPG. All Super Mario RPG fans out there, shout out. Yeah, I cannot wait for this one. This is definitely one of those games that's going to pull me apart. It launches on my birthday, so that is even more reason for me to take the day off and do nothing but play Super Mario RPG. So I'm very excited for that.
Sounds like a plan. Looking into 2024, there's a couple JRPGs, especially in the early part of 2024. There's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and then Persona 3 Reload. I played the original Final Fantasy VII and then the remake, so I'm excited for Rebirth, but I never played any Persona except for Persona 5. Jada, are you familiar with Persona 3?
Yeah, not as much as I am. I think my real big jump on point was Persona 4, is where I put a lot of time into it. I did mess around with a little bit of 3 on, I believe it was the PSP or the Vita, back when the handheld ports that they did, or launches of it. So I played a little bit of it. I'm really excited to kind of give it a more fair shake now that I'm older and have a more experienced palette when it comes to the all those games, the Persona franchise.
You know, you're excited for the second chapter of the Final Fantasy VII Remake saga?
Oh, I've platinumed Remake on PS4 and PS5, so I'm definitely just a little bit excited for Rebirth. I'm really excited to see all the new locations. I want to see how we're gonna control what Red 13 is gonna look like. Are we gonna see Kate Sith? Is Vincent gonna show up? Are we gonna get an airship? What's the open world gonna look like? Like, there's so many questions that I just can't wait to have answered when that drops early next year.
Avowed. Ryan, do you expect Avowed next year?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they've told us as such, and I think at this point, Microsoft has shown they're not going to put something out before it's ready. So I think they're confident in 2024. Now, obviously, they haven't told us any sort of specific window within that. So it's probably best to take that to mean the end of 2024. And if it ends up being sooner, we'll just be pleasantly surprised. But Obsidian's track record is excellent, and Obsidian is a studio that has actually kind of notoriously been haunted by having their publishers making them ship their games early, whether it was KOTOR 2 or South Park Stick of Truth ended up with a whole publisher mess, but there was the Alpha Protocol was another one that Sega.
Oh man, that was such a long
I
time
reviewed
ago.
that game for OXM back in the day.
Wow.
So now with Microsoft backing Obsidian, they will no longer be forced to put their games out to meet any sort of deadline, and thus, yeah, I'm super confident that Avowed's going to be really fun. Even if it's quote unquote only an Outer Worlds sized game of kind of 20 to 40 hours rather than a Fallout New Vegas Skyrim sized 80 to 100 plus hour game. It's give me the quality over quantity any day of the week.
There is nothing wrong with having a better paced, like action-packed project that is just like start to finish, like a great experience.
I mean, South Park: The Stick of Truth from Obsidian is probably in my top 5, maybe even top 3 RPGs ever. It's one of I love that. It's also one of the. It might be the funniest video game I've ever played in my life, but it's also a great RPG. And that, I think it was 12, maybe 15 hours at the most. But they were all such great hours. So, yeah, Avowed, and I'm confident that we will see Avowed next year, and we'll just have to wait and see exactly what part of the year it's in. But, yeah, that's going to be probably in our hands in roughly 365 days or less.
You mentioned Outer Worlds. I am reminded that that sequel is on its way as well. And I think all we've gotten is a sort of a announcement trailer that was just a cinematic a couple years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, that's that sort of tongue-in-cheek, like, we know this is a dumb CG-only announcement trailer that's not showing you anything, and they were making light of that. So, yeah, that seems to be, I think it's very reasonable to infer that game is definitely behind Avowed in terms of where it is in development. So, if that's 2025, and then you've got their sister studio inXile, fellow Microsoft-owned Southern California-based RPG expert. You've got Clockwork Revolution that we just got announced at the June Xbox showcase. That's probably not 24 because otherwise Microsoft probably would have mentioned 2024. But so that's probably 2025, maybe even that slips into 26. Again, tough to know how far along it is, but yeah, just Microsoft alone has a ridiculous RPG pipeline, like legitimately ridiculous.
I'm so excited for all of this.
Elder Scrolls 6 way at
That's
back there too, yeah.
2030, who knows if we're lucky, if we're hoping.
Yeah. That one's a ways out. Next year, Sega will deliver Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This is the direct sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon, which was fantastic, and I can't wait for that. Then Capcom should have Dragon's Dogma 2, if they can get that out the door next year. That one's looking really great. The original Dragon's Dogma I liked quite a bit. It's funny, it's a fantasy action RPG, single player, but with the whole gameplay system is designed around playing with NPCs as though you were playing with other people. I think that's pretty interesting. Jada, are you a Dragon's Dogma fan?
Yeah, I created some interesting pawns back in the day and sent them online for other people to borrow. They maybe not have been the best pawns, but I was having fun making pawns and just playing through with different characters and different classes. Capcom said earlier, I don't know if they said, but there was like rumors swirling around they have a big game that's supposed to launch somewhere in the next like 6 to 8 months that's going to sell millions of copies. I wouldn't be surprised if that's Dragon Dogma 2.
That's probably the one.
Because, it's the one they've been like kind of showcasing a lot more of. I would love it to be like a Monster Hunter World 2. Hint, hint, Capcom.
Well, that would sell millions of copies.
Exactly. But I also know that although Dragon's Dogma, I don't believe sold extremely well right off the bat, through its remasters and re-releases, it developed a massive cult following, and so I do believe that Dragon's Dogma 2 will have legs and will definitely perform better for them than the first one did.
And then looking even further ahead, past 2024, there's a few other projects that we know of that we just don't know much about. Dragon Age Dreadwolf is supposed to be the next RPG from BioWare. Ryan, what's your sort of spidey sense on this one? You were talking about your favorite RPGs. Isn't Knights of the Old Republic your favorite RPG of all time?
That is my number one. Good memory, Damon. Yeah, KOTOR from BioWare, my all-time favorite role-playing game. And yeah, you've got Dragon Age Dreadwolf here, the long-awaited Dragon Age 4, and Mass Effect 4 or 5, depending on how you feel about Mass Effect Andromeda. You've got another Mass Effect hanging, kind of, again, lagging behind that, seemingly, in terms of its development progress. So, Yeah, those are both probably going to hit in the second half of this console generation. Now, could Dragon Age be, since we haven't seen or heard anything about it for a while, could it show up in the spring of next year with a big like trailer gameplay presentation and say, we're out in fall 2024? Yeah, that is definitely possible. That game has been in development for a very long time, so it could certainly drop within a year or so from now. But until we're given any solid indication that it will, I think it's probably best to just think of that one as still a little further out until they clue us in a little bit more.
I'm A-okay with letting BioWare cook for a little bit longer on those ones.
No rush. Yeah, we clearly have plenty of other massive, amazing role-playing games in the meantime while we wait for the new Dragon Age and the new Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, next year it'll be 10 years since Dragon Age Inquisition, because that was our game of the year in 2014. And then speaking of KOTOR, there is the KOTOR remake that is floating around there in some sort of development hell. I don't know. I hope they can get that course corrected and that eventually sees the light of day at some point. And then finally, I wanted to mention Dragon Quest XII, which was announced in May of 2021, but we've heard nothing since then. Jada, are you a Dragon Quest fan as well?
You know what? I was not a big Dragon Quest fan until Dragon Quest XI: Echoes of Elusive Age. That game, I was on leave from work when that one launched, and I poured so many hours and made so many wiki videos for when I was at a previous life at a different job. I loved Dragon Quest XI. I cannot wait for 12. I really hope that they continue to really nail the essence of great storytelling. Also, I really hope they don't swap from turn-based to real-time like a lot of other bigger RPGs have started to do to try and bring in new fan bases, because I really loved being able to have that turn-based system in my RPG library, because I'm really between that and then I've been playing a lot of I went back to Midnight Suns lately because I was like I need that turn-based itch. Before Baldur's Gate came out, I needed to scratch that, and it was doing so I'm really hoping Dragon Quest 12 comes out and just really knocks our socks off and gets the attention it really deserves, because I feel like for a series that's been around as long as it has, it doesn't really get that mainstream popularity like some of the other games. I'm hoping Dragon Quest 12 gets the Persona 5 just blowout that it deserves.
Mm-hmm. It's also being developed in Unreal Engine 5, so it should be a pretty good looking game when it eventually resurfaces. Those are just a few of the really big RPGs that you'll be able to play on your next-gen consoles in the near future and distant future. We have the results of the poll from last episode. We're talking about Gamescom is coming up next week. Xbox is going to be there. Nintendo is going to be there. We asked what game are you most excited to see at Gamescom, and Ryan, winning result, 40% of the votes went to Starfield, perhaps unsurprisingly, beating out Super Mario Bros. Wonder, beating out Armored Core 6 from FromSoft. So you're right. There's definitely a lot of excitement out there for Starfield. Before we go, there's a poll for you to vote on for this week's episode. What upcoming RPG are you most excited for? Is it Starfield? Let's make Starfield the winner of 2 polls in a row.
Yeah, back to back. Let's go.
Back to back. Let's do it. Is it Starfield? Is it Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Is it Avowed? Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode goes live, and we'll share the results with you next episode, which won't be next week, because next week is Gamescom, and this show is going to take a week off, but then we'll be back with more new-gen hardware news and games after that. I'm Damon. Thank you to both Jada and Ryan. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes in our LA and San Francisco studios to make this all possible. We'll see you guys next time.